And welcome back to the Baseball Development Hub podcast. My name is Trevor Powers, and I am joined today by a former co-host of the Backside Ground Balls podcast, Will Massa, who is now the director of college baseball content and co-host of the College Baseball Show with Just Baseball Media. Will, we talk so much, but it's been a while since we've talked on a recorded platform. Thank you so much for hopping back on here with me.
I have not been on since the rebrand. So this is technically my first appearance on this podcast. And I have missed a little intro video. I will say it's been a long time, but you and I talk more than I think most people that I am friends with. So it feels like we haven't really missed anything.
No, not at all. I hope our on-air chemistry is not impacted at any way because we have spent more phone calls. We've spent time in Louisiana together, all these things. And it is surprising that since the rebrand, last July, when we switched to the Baseball Development Hub podcast, that you haven't been on. And obviously, we pivoted our content. And for those that have been around since me and you were on here on a tri-weekly basis, it felt like during the college baseball season last year, we were covering the sport. We've pivoted away. You've gone up in the world and move on to greener pastures with Just Baseball Media. And we just wanted to kind of check in on the college baseball season, have a conversation about what's going on, and spin it to a player development lens like we always do and we always try to do. So we really appreciate you taking the time to do this and give your expertise on what's going on in college baseball, because it's been a really fun season so far. And I don't know, I guess that's where I'll start, is kind of your takeaway so far in the season of what like the theme of the season has been.
Honestly, to this point, and even this weekend has even changed that. I would have said coming into this weekend, there are four teams that are clearly at the top, and then 45 teams that are kind of you can slot in anywhere in that next grouping. And obviously, Mississippi State loses the series to Arkansas this weekend, so that kind of even changes that. Like right now, I think there's three teams. I think it's UCLA, I think it's Texas, I think it's Georgia Tech, and then you have this giant list of teams that you can slot anywhere from spots 5 to 40, and it's a ton of parity. And I think it's really, really good for the sport. I think a lot of people maybe came into the year, and sure, when you look at the championships, it's SEC. And you and I talked about this. It's only one team can win the championship, right? It happens to be SEC teams the last handful of years, and an ACC team hasn't been able to knock them out. We had the Sun Belt team in Coastal last year that hasn't been able to tip over the anthill, but this year is a lot different. Like there's a very wide range of teams across the board, and I think we've had as many as 14 SEC teams in our top 25, and as little as likely nine coming into this next week, based on some final results with LSU dropping a series to Vanderbilt and a couple other teams struggling a little bit. I think we might have nine this week. So it's a ton of parity. There's been some clickbaity stuff that is the SEC bad at baseball now. It's like, no, they're not bad at baseball. There's just more parity across the sport. And you and I talked about it coming into the year. When you cut six roster spots from LSU at the top, those six kids are still staying in Division I baseball. And it's just this trickle down effect to where the schools like Sac State are now able to go into Baton Rouge and take two of three from LSU.
Yeah. Had a conversation last week with a high level Division I coach who's in your guys' top 10 at Just Baseball Media. And he was saying how through the early season, the parity in the sport where the Sunday guys for two of the teams that you wouldn't even recognize if you were a college baseball fan unless you're in the weeds were legitimate power four arms. And he attributed it to the roster reduction because those guys have to go somewhere. He's like, that's a freshman that would typically be on a power four roster, but he's not because of the roster reduction. And that's a player that, when we saw him, our lineup face him, like we felt like our guys were getting ready to face SEC level pitching. And that's a guy who's pitching Sunday for an Ohio Valley team, right? Like that is crazy to think about because in past years, that wasn't always the case, right? You'd occasionally have outliers and things like that. But I think that's a conversation that we've talked about a couple of times on here, how it's changed player development, how it's changed player identification, how it's changed, the ability to perform right away in these things that teams have to do. And I think it is cool to see the parity in the sport to a certain extent of these gaps that are, you have your number one team that has fallen off out of the top 25 and most likely in most cases with the LSU Tigers, or at least one or two coming into the year and reigning national champions. And it really is cool to see the parity in the sport because I think it's brings a much more entertaining brand and being able to see these teams just meat grinder each other up and chew each other up and spit each other out. And I think that's going to make for a really fun postseason that is wide open in comparison to it always felt like a race for second. And it just was like, who's the best SEC team that can outlast the postseason and who's going to come in second? That's what it felt like for the last couple of years.
Yeah, definitely. And this year is very different. Obviously, we have, the West Coast team in UCLA that seems to be the powerhouse. The new regime in Texas, which is a true blue blood of a program, and they're kind of getting back to what they were. I shouldn't say getting back. I mean, this is a program that I believe was in Omaha last in 2018, so not that far removed from being a really, really good program. But then there's some new faces, like Georgia Tech is a new face that has been kind of knocking on the door. And then you have these younger head coaches. West Virginia has been in and out of the top 25. Um, even A&M, I think, is taking steps in the right direction with a new head coach, and it's just been a really interesting year. And there's teams down the list that are making crazy strides. One team that has taken huge strides this season is Arkansas State in the Sun Belt, and that's a team that was in the cellar, and really that new coaching staff and new regime has made them like quite honestly a legit top three Sun Belt team this season. With Coastal having so many injuries, it's kind of hard to predict what they're going to be over the course of the year, but yeah, the parity this year is crazy, and it's funny because there's a lot of football fans that have now entered into college baseball, and it's like, well, LSU lost one game to this team, and it's like, yes, but it's baseball, right? Like we just saw USC actually their undefeated streak is finally over. They lost game two of a doubleheader to Northwestern, so they're 19-1 to start the year, which is unbelievable what that program is doing right now, and for them to go from a middle of the pack Big Ten team last year to a top 15 team in the country. There's just so much. Every week feels like a coin flip, really.
Yeah, you mentioned Arkansas State. Our friends over at Newt Force, they're building a whole new pitching lab for them that's going to go in this summer. So for a program that's on the rise in the Sun Belt, probably we'll see even more of a rise over the next few years on the player development side. It's really exciting to see the programs that invest in the right things in the player development and seeing the success and the fruits of their success. And I think this is just going to be the beginning of hopefully a really good run of Arkansas State baseball as they're putting in a couple 100,000 into a new pitching lab to have it be a player development centric piece of their program. Let's talk about USC and specifically let's talk about the Big Ten or the former Pac 12, however you want to see it, because when you look at the top 25 coming into the weekend, there were four former Pac 12 teams and three of them currently reside in the Big Ten. And you mentioned USC and how that roster has turned. And I think they're one of the best stories of this season. We talked about it off air. It kind of feels like they finally have come up for air, right? They had a new coaching regime coming in the last few years. We know Southern California baseball talent is there. It's a fun place to play. You can attract talent from states like Utah and some of those northern states because they want to come play in the good weather. And it's a great program with a rich history. But it felt like they were still kind of willowing in what the struggles had been recently, changing ballparks. And it feels like they finally got settled in. And it had been unbelievable. Their 19-0 start to the season. Their pitching staff has been the best in the country with like a sub 3 ERA as a staff, which is unbelievable and unheard of in college baseball. What's your takeaway about the Big Ten and kind of almost the competitive rise of a lot of these teams that were formerly the Pac 12, which was obviously arguably the best baseball conference for a little bit there, but now have pivoted in the Big Ten and seen immediate success?
Yeah, to be honest, I wasn't sure what those schools were going to be. And I feel like this applies for a lot of sports, but you're not going to UCLA and playing on the West Coast anymore. You're not playing in Oregon, California, and Arizona. You're going to New Brunswick, New Jersey, and you're going to Maryland. Like even the recruiting landscape for those schools has completely changed. So for them to retain the talent that they have, to me, is always going to be impressive. And there's always really big draws to those schools. There is. But at the end of the day, like you're spending 60% of your season in the Midwest in April and on the East Coast. Like you're not in California anymore for the majority of your season. And in USC's case, it's unbelievable what they're doing. You said sub 3 ERA. It's actually a sub 2 ERA. They have a 1.61 as a team, and opposing hitters are hitting 152. The 1-2 punch at the top of the rotation in Mason Edwards and Grant Goebel has been unreal. 63 innings, 87 strikeouts. And they're unhittable right now. They've only allowed 3 runs between the two of them over 63 innings. So these two guys are going out every single weekend, providing length and being genuinely unhittable. And they're not walking guys either. Doval has 3 walks. Edwards has 11 walks. And Stankiewicz has done ridiculously good things. Andrew Johnson's a guy that has taken a huge step up. And this was a team, and I've admitted it so many times at this point. This is a team in the preseason that I kept saying, like, I don't know what this pitching staff is going to be, because you lose Caden Aoki to Georgia, who has been the anchor for them for 3 seasons. He's been their Friday night guy for 3 years, and he's out. And coming into the year, Andrew Johnson was I believe their most tenured innings guy from last season, and he only threw about 20 innings last year. So they had a lot of inexperience coming into the 2026 season. And to your point, you and I were talking about it, off air, like the stadium is built and you get to finally have a place that you can call home. And like the program feels like it's settling in, and the new regime under Stank is really rolling. And it's so much fun, man. Like it is really fun to see. And so many people are pointing to well, they haven't really played anybody yet. It's like they're 19-0 and nobody's hitting against them. Like everybody this season has lost to teams that they should have beaten, and USC simply didn't do that. A lot of it is the anti Big Ten, anti West Coast bias, whatever you want to call it. But it's really fun to see these Pac-12 schools that have historically been really, really good now getting back to what they should be. And then, of course, UCLA, I mean, comes in as the preseason consensus #1 across every single media outlet imaginable, and really hasn't given up that spot because of what they've been able to do. And I'll let you touch on it too, but they did a really good job this season of challenging themselves early, because last year, who was the teams that really they struggled with and bounced them? The SEC teams, the Arkansas, the LSUs. And John Savage, I had an opportunity to talk to him when I was down in Arlington, and he even said, what was the importance of playing these teams early on, not only playing them, but beating them, because they beat Mississippi State, they beat Texas A&M, they beat Tennessee all 3 days in a row. And he said, well, these are the teams that bounced us, and these are the teams you have to get through if you want to be the last team standing. So for UCLA to challenge themselves and win those games, like, you have to be excited for what they're going to be able to do.
Yeah, we'll definitely hit on UCLA because I think that they're a fascinating team, but wanted to just tie a knot on USC and the narrative around they haven't played anybody. This is a program that has 12 national championships but hasn't been to Omaha in the turn of the century, right? Like, and that's just me
I believe
throwing a
so,
dart.
yeah.
I don't really know what the 2000s looked like for them, but at the very least, we're rounding out 20 plus years of a program that should be elite based on the talent base, based on the location, based on the tradition. It's a turn in the right direction is the point that brings excitement and should bring the coverage around this team. Who cares what they do the rest of the way? It's a step in the right direction for a program that should be one of the powers of the sport when you just combine all of the factors of location and talent and all the things that they have. And in Stankiewicz's however many years he's been there, this is Sean Allen, their pitching coach's second year. And he was a big time hire when he came in, which a lot of people were excited about. And so that's the step that you need to see, right? Like that's all people should be acknowledging is it's an awesome story. They should be the pillar of the Big Ten because they're competing against a bunch of cold weather programs, and they are a warm weather program, which matters in a sport like baseball. And they should be competing at the top of the sport. And it was just one of those things that nobody understood for the longest time. And it's good to see them start heading in the right direction. And is a credit to that coaching staff for ironing out whatever needed to be done from a player development resource, from a stadium, making sure they had a place to call home, like you said, and just breathe, from a hiring standpoint, getting the right guys on the boat, and heading in the right direction. I know a couple of their staff members follow the Backside Ground Balls media page, so we'll take a little bit of credit for the pitching development. Maybe they dove into the content a little bit and learned a thing or two. We'll go with that for a little bit, but we definitely obviously want the opportunity to get out there and kind of see behind the curtain of what's going on. But on the UCLA side, again, there was a part of me that wondered in the modern landscape if John Savage's style would work, right? He's a very great baseball coach, unbelievable pitching mind. And they had the 1 year when this group that you're mentioning were all freshmen, where it was just like, that didn't look good, right? Like just across the board, they weren't that great, and they were kind of coming off a couple straight years where it was like, like just willowing away. The fact that he's been able to set the culture that has kept these guys there, which has allowed them to build depth and be the best team, at least talent wise, in the Big Ten, which is what they should be. Kind of the same thing that I'm saying with USC is what they should be. And then you combine the factor of that they're well coached, their pitchers throw strikes, they play California level defense, which is always going to be important when you talk about West Coast baseball. They run the bases well, and then you sprinkle in a superstar in Rock Chalowski, a power only guy who can go on a heater like Will Gasparino to start the year, and you start to have a team that it's like, why these other teams outside the SEC haven't won a national championship is because it's the combination of overwhelming talent without the coaching chops, right? Like that the SEC teams at the top, like the LSU's and the Arkansas, they have unbelievable talent and they're well coached. This is a team that compares in terms of talent and depth and is also probably better coached than some of those programs because John Savage has made a career off of being one of the best fundamental coaches in the country and making sure his guys are always doing the things that we talk about, running the bases, being able to defend the short game, being able to play defense, being able to throw strikes. When you check those boxes and you combine it with the talent they have, it's really exciting.
Yeah, 100%. And it's so interesting the switch. So their last national championship, that 2012 team, that was a team that hit maybe 230 as a team. And you had the best closer in the country in David Berg, and you had an unbelievable starting rotation, and they played suffocating defense. And it was, you're going to walk the leadoff guy, we're going to bunt him over twice and try and get him
Yep.
in kind of deal. Or
Mm-hmm.
we're going to steal second, bunt him over, and we're going to bury a ball into the ground to second base, and we're going to score 3 runs, and we're going to beat you that way. And this team is so overwhelmingly good on offense. It's such a suffocating lineup. Like you mentioned, it's 8 guys. The biggest reason why they were preseason ranked number one is this was an Omaha team less than a year ago, and they brought back the entirety of that team. They brought back 8 of 9 offensive starters, and it's like, okay, well, you lost one starter. Who are you going to plug? One of Texas's best hitters, and Will Gasparino. And what does he do? He hits 11 bombs in his first 10 games as a Bruin, and goes absolutely nuclear in Arlington. And he's got 34 RBI in 18 games right now. The kid is just on a ridiculous heater. And there's so many guys in this lineup that are unbelievably good that don't get the credit because you have guys like Rock and you have Gasparino on this crazy heater, but you have guys like Molavai Lavu who had 85 RBI last year. Like he's a guy that could legitimately push triple digits in the RBI section. Like doesn't strike out. He doesn't walk a ton, but he doesn't strike out. He puts everything in play, hits the ball hard. You have Roman Martin on the infield who's ridiculous. And in Arlington, I got to talk a little bit with Michael Barnett, who's their Saturday starter, and he's a fascinating case. He threw 6 innings and he had one singular pitch above 90 miles an hour, and it was 90.5. And he just throws bowling ball sinkers, throws a ton of strikes, induces a lot of weak contact. And he was talking about how it's been instilled in that pitching staff that every time they take the mound, it's an 8-on-1 or 9-on-1 mentality is what he calls it, because truly they have 9+ defenders on the diamond at all times, including the best defensive shortstop I think I've ever seen in my life in Rock Chalowski. The kid makes everything look easy, but the outfield is ridiculously good. Will Gasparino is arguably the best defensive center fielder in the country. Like they play suffocating defense, and it's a suffocating lineup. And it's so funny because Will Gasparino, I'm talking about how good he's been on offense. He hits eighth for them. He's hit at the bottom of the lineup. And the biggest question all weekend in Arlington to John Savage was, why is this kid hitting eighth? And all he kept saying was, think about the depth. Think about how hard that is for an opposing pitching staff to get through Rock, to get through Peyton Brennan, to get through Dean West, to get through Roman Martin. And you can't breathe because you have Will Gasparino and Dominic Cadiz hitting 8 and 9. Like these are guys that just, it doesn't stop. Like it really doesn't stop. It's such an impressive lineup to watch, and it's going to continue all season. We saw them do it against some of the best pitching staffs in the SEC. They looked really good against Tegan Coons, who's been unreal for Tennessee. They did it against Mississippi State, who we'll talk about a little bit later because that's an unbelievable program with what O'Connor is doing. But yeah, I mean there are no, feels like there are no holes in the armor on UCLA this year.
So the one thing that I would like to see, and sometimes this is a later in the year thing, and especially as the weather starts to warm, I'd like to see some more depth of power. But again, that's just nitpicking a number one overall team. When you get into regionals, again, the 3-run bomb and those kind of factors, they win baseball games. So I would like to see a couple more guys step up in the power department and start to challenge double digit 15, 20 home runs. But other than that, again, like you said, you have great defense. Like that isn't going to give them any problems in the Big Ten. It's going to give them problems a weekend in June, a second weekend in June, and a week in June, right? Like those are the main things. And even you could argue winning the College World Series is different than winning a regional, right? You need more power in a regional and a super regional setting, and then you just go to a graveyard in Omaha and you have to pitch it, play defense, have a outfield that can get after it and run down those fly balls and those kinds of things. And it's more about clutch hitting and high level pitching, which it favors them almost more once they get to that standpoint. So if I was going to nitpick anything, it would just be the depth of the power. It seems like the power side is relying on those three guys that you mentioned. But I think that, again, it's one of those things that as the weather turns, I anticipate that to be more of a part of their game as they continue to get comfortable in the power department and that side of things. You mentioned Mississippi State, obviously UCLA, and they had a huge fun game on a Sunday in Arlington, and it was a ended on a Rock Chalowski home run to go ahead there, and just an unbelievable College World Series final S game. Mississippi State did lose this weekend to Arkansas as they dropped this series on the road. So it's not necessarily a stain on their resume, but it's one of those things where coming into the weekend, there might have been a lot more excitement about what this Mississippi State team is. But it's a fascinating case study because Brian O'Connor is a great coach. Should have made the tournament last year with the Virginia team and then had his departure out of the program. And obviously, a lot of fans were frustrated about the way that tenure ended. But he's been unbelievable for multiple years. Anybody who's connected to anybody in this sport knew that you give him the resources of a Mississippi State, and they're going to be really good. And so far in year one, they look to be a national championship contender, and I don't anticipate that slowing down anytime soon.
No, not at all. And that was kind of the big point that I loved hammering home all off season was you're taking a guy that's been at Virginia with no football money, quite frankly, as many of the ACC schools don't have that football money. And he was able to get to Omaha like a lot in his career. And now you're going to give him, some of the top resources in the entire country at Mississippi State. And it's like you're a kid in the candy shop now. Like you have all the resources you need to go recruit. He brought over some really really talented players from Virginia with him, like Aiden Teal, James Nunnally, Valencius on the pitching side. And this team is just the epitome of depth, I would say, in the country. Like I would argue that there is maybe only one team that is deeper than them, especially on the offensive side, and they can roll out 14 guys on a whim. I mean, they're probably going to have, I would say, 15 guys that have like legitimately significant at bats that aren't quite qualified, maybe, but play a lot of good baseball for them. And they have plenty of guys that are kind of sitting on the bench that are hitting well above 350 with a decent sample size at this point. And it's been really fun to watch how O'Connor goes about hitting the right buttons in the right situations. He's been unbelievable at putting in pinch hitters that have had a lot of success so far. And it's really funny because that's one of those things that I think we give coaches a lot of credit for. But you have to give the players credit. Like there are guys that are coming off the bench, hitting home runs on the first pitch they're seeing. I saw Jacob Parker do it twice in Arlington. Reed Stallman did it in Arlington as well. He put him in, and first pitch he sees crushes a home run into the right field bullpen. I mean, these are guys that are coming into games prepared, and I think it just speaks to what O'Connor does. And he talked about a lot about how the depth of this team is quite frankly the strength, but the way that he spun it was, they can't afford to throw away at bats. You can't afford to throw away at bats in this lineup because if you do, there are four guys behind you that are waiting, licking their chops to get an opportunity to start. And Reed Stallman is a great example of that. He's got 12 starts this year, over 20 games played, and he was a guy that at the beginning of the season was not playing, got some pinch hit opportunities, was unreal, and now he's starting consistently, and he's got over an 1100 OPS. So there are no shortage of guys in this lineup that can hit, and it's one of those things that if somebody cools off a little bit, guess what? They have three guys to replace him with.
Yeah, it's always fun pulling up a team's statistics, and your brain tells you based on how many times we've done this as just the guys that have perused college baseball statistics for years is like where the 300 hitters should stop. Like you always have the one guy hitting 430, you'll have the next guy hitting 380, and then usually it drops off a significant amount, and you usually have some guys hitting in the 200s by the time you get to like 4 or 5. The fact that they have six guys at the top of their lineup that are all above 326. And then you get into the guys that have had spotty playing time, like you're talking about their depth, and it's 433, 394, 391, 387. It's just like that's true depth, right? Like again, we talk about, there's competitive depth, which is just like replacement level players who can come in and fill. And then there's like legit national championship level depth if we need a guy or we lose a guy and we fit them in. That's what Mississippi State has in comparison to maybe some of the other teams that we talk about with depth. I mean, it's just that's a wealth of talent when you talk about even your spot starters are out there putting up video game level numbers. And it's just like, yeah, give that guy a full, starters reps. Even one of the best players in the country, because that's what it feels like their whole roster is.
Yeah, and to that point, it's not these guys that are coming off the bench and hitting 400 because they're, finding holes, hitting singles. I mean, these guys are coming into games as pinch hitters and hitting extra base hits, like with some thump, like multiple home runs, multiple extra base hits. It seems like no matter who they plug and play, they're getting similar production. And that's a really scary team to face down the road because, oh, our nine hitter is struggling a little bit. That's fine. We're going to plug in someone else, or we need a pinch hitter in the eighth inning. Guess what? We're going to put in true freshman Jacob Parker, and he's probably going to take you hard because he's that good. And it's the same way on the pitching side, right? So Ryan McPherson was a guy who threw no more than 35 innings last year, and he is a legit Friday night ace in the SEC. He's got 36 strikeouts over 39 innings so far. He's 3-0 on the season, 2.5 ERA. He's looked unreal, and Oak has talked about him. And it's funny because Arlington, when I was there, was week 3, and he mentioned that he's still figuring things out. It's like, you got to remember, he doesn't really know what he's doing yet. It's like he's still figuring things out. He's figuring out how to get to the 6th and 7th inning because he was a reliever last year that only threw 30 innings. Like, so it's guys like that that he has the confidence in to say, okay, I'm going to let you work through some things. You're going to give me 7 innings because when we get into SEC play, you're going to need to give us 7 innings. And I trust you to get to that point. And I think it speaks volumes about what the pitching development has been. And you look at a guy like Tomas Valencias, who's came over from Virginia with Oak, and he has been lights out as well. 33 strikeouts in 27 innings to a 1.3 ERA. He's got a sub-1 WHIP. He's 4-0 in 5 starts. Like, those are guys that's a pretty scary 1-2 punch. And then a guy like Duke Stone, who's really stepped up in a major way in the Sunday role. This is just another complete team. And one part that is funny is that you had a guy in Jack Bauer who, had he not foregone the draft, arguably would have been a top 20 pick. He's a high school kid that was pumping 103, and I've got to see him a couple of times. And he's struggling. Like, he is. And you got to remember, he's an 18-year-old kid. And with that development that he has behind him, he may not throw a lot this year, but I anticipate he is going to be a stud next year.
I was gonna say that is a sign of a really good developmental program is when a player like Jack Bauer comes in and is at the bottom of your ERA, he's struggling to throw strikes, he's this highly talented guy. If you just are able to, hey man, you just need to go on the back burner for a little bit. We're gonna simmer and you're gonna come out and you're gonna be a beast when you're ready, right? Like so many times those guys are rushed. That is like the epitome of what Arkansas baseball has done under Matt Hobbs since he's been there. Has been like, oh, we have this super talented freshman. Well, if he's not ready, we don't have to rush that. Now they do a great job when those guys do come in and they are ready. They put them out there and they usually perform. But so many times it's just like, oh, who's this guy coming out of nowhere for Arkansas again? That's kind of what Mississippi State is building. And a lot of people talk about the Brian O'Connor hire, and he brought his offensive conglomerate over from Virginia. What people don't really realize is Justin Parker was the previous pitching coach under the previous regime, and they decided to keep him. And I know there was a lot of conversations about whether they were going to keep him or not. But when they decided to keep him, I was really excited because Justin Parker did an unbelievable job since he's been there. And it's good to see that the fruits of his success are continuing to carry over because he's one of the best pitching coaches. When we travel the country, when he was in his first couple years, like it was a surprise to us when we talked to pitching coaches and be like, who are some other guys in the conference that you look at as like super smart? And he's like, oh, what they're doing at Mississippi State is really impressive. I'm like, really, the team that's kind of might get fired, right? And they're like, oh, yeah. Justin Parker's doing a great job. And so it's really interesting to see because, like you said, when you have Jack Bauer next year, who's probably going to move into a starter role, it's similar to what Chris Lavonis has done for Wake Forest this year, right? Like last year, there were times when he was starting in midweeks and you're like, uncompetitive. Like he's just not anywhere close to strikes. And it's like, okay, put him on the back burner, let him simmer, get him in some midweek outings throughout the year to gain his confidence and gain his experience, and let him go next year and just watch what he becomes. And that's what Lavonis has been. So on the pitching side, that's unbelievably impressive that they haven't had to rush him because they're able to maximize what guys like McPherson give them, what guys that they've brought in as well, maximizing what those guys do. And again, their bullpen's really good too. I know Ben Davis hasn't had a great start to the year ERA wise. We're talking about a 15 strikeout to 1 walk with a 205 batting average against. Like that ERA number is going to plummet down here soon. And he's one of the best relievers in the country and has been for a couple of years now. So they're deep on both sides of the ball, talented, and it's impressive to see that did this in year one, right? Like this is a guy who is going to get multiple years to continue to refine the roster as he sees best.
Yeah, we're year one. We're only 4 weeks into the season, which is like
Yeah.
to put it in perspective. Like we're just getting into conference play. Like this team right now is really good, and I think it's going to be much better when we get into postseason play. I really do. This is an extremely talented team with a really good coaching staff. And another guy is Tyler Pitzer. He was the Cape Cod Player of the Year. He struggled at South Carolina last year. He's barely thrown for them. Like he was a guy when they came into the year that I thought had a shot at cracking the rotation. Like he's probably going to be a main bullpen guy for them. And if he can figure things out, like you have plenty of guys depth wise that have been really, really successful at different levels. And I mean, this is just a really fun team, quite honestly. It is really fun to watch a team that isn't afraid to say, you're struggling today or this matchup is better. We're going to put in this guy with full confidence, and he's probably going to go out there and hit a double.
Mm-hmm. No, I mean, and when you recruit at the level, again, when we talked about this last year about why would O'Connor look to leave, it was exactly this, like the ability to be at a program that cares about baseball to the extent they do. And there's actually a benefit to being a program that doesn't care as much or acknowledge that their football program might not be a behemoth and be able to say, because 5% of revenue share going to baseball would be a game changer in a sport like baseball compared to 5% of revenue share going to football. It's like, oh, okay, whatever, right? Because those guys could push a $20 million cap if they needed to. Mississippi State obviously committed to investing in O'Connor, investing in the program. And when you combine that level of investment with this high level of a coach, not to say that the previous staff wasn't high level, you're just bringing in a coach that has done more with less and now giving him more. It's a streamlined process, right? Like this is why we talk about, we had the podcast a couple of weeks ago, people in programs, right? People in programs. Like if you invest in the people that have had success and you just blindly, like again, Dan and I could probably do just as good top 25 rankings as anybody who is neck deep in the weeds just by being like DVH, good coach, Brian O'Connor, good coach, Jay Johnson, good coach, right? Like, and I know it's self-explanatory and it's funny, but like it's so true when you look at how the results come after a couple of weeks, and it's like no surprise they're one of the best teams in the country because that's what Brian O'Connor does, and there is no patience, there is no need for it. It's just like right into Starkville, right into a national championship contender. Don't even need that much time to build it.
Yeah, 100%. I've started to use that line on the podcast a lot, especially when we're doing weekend predictions. Like you get an uber talented team. A good example is Alabama, and this isn't like a knock on Rob Vaughn, but he's younger in his career. I think it's similar with Saban's. Like I think Saban is an unbelievable coach. They're pouring a ton of money into that program. It's awesome to see what West Virginia is at, but he hasn't had this super long track record yet. Like I think in 5 years, Saban enters that conversation, but like right now, it's like, well, he doesn't quite have the track record that maybe an O'Connor has. So it's like
Mm-hmm.
maybe you take this other team. So it's really fascinating because we are in a world in college baseball where there are a lot of new coaches that I think are still kind of getting the feet wet. I think Dan Fitzgerald is a really good example down in Kansas. Like they had an unbelievable season last year. They're kind of struggling this year. I think they're trying to figure out how they can recruit effectively year over year. They brought in a lot of junior college guys. But again, like he's a guy that I think I trust a ton to win a lot of games year in and year out. But it's going to be a little bit of a bumpy ride like those first couple of years. But when you see that blueprint of success of what they do early, it's like, okay, this is going to be a legit program. Give them a couple of years. These are programs that are on the rise and going to be really good.
100%. I couldn't agree more. And it's just one of those fascinating parts of evaluating teams and evaluating coaches. And in a sport like baseball, where there is a large element of setting the culture, developing your talent, and making sure they're in a position to succeed, people in programs wins out more times than not, right? It just is what it is. And it's one of those things that if you hang your hat on good programs and good people, you're going to have a lot of success. Let's stay in the SEC, but head over to the state of Georgia and talk about the two teams. I texted you before the weekend. Obviously, we have some results that from the weekend that we still need to round out. But that is it a hot take to say the two best teams in the country might be in the state of Georgia?
No, I don't think so. I mean, it's funny because we're talking about Georgia. They're 1-1 against Tennessee coming into the Sunday game, which is going to be a crazy good matchup. Tennessee, I think, has gotten not as much credit as they deserve this season, quite honestly, and that's coming from somebody who has ranked them fairly low in the top 25. The pitching staff for Tennessee is crazy good this year, man. Like Tegan Coons and Landon Mack have been unbelievable for them. So it's no surprise that they were able to compete with that Georgia lineup. But I think when you look at talent wise up and down the rosters, what the team, and again, both teams have not, this is their first real test. It really is. Like Georgia Tech's first real test was against Clemson this weekend, and they took it to Clemson. And this is Georgia's first real test against Tennessee, who has been tested. But I think watching them compete, and when you look at the depth of these two teams, you have to say at least, arguably the two most talented teams in the country are in the state of Georgia, if not the two best teams. I think, it's super fun to look at a guy like Daniel Jackson for Georgia, and he kind of burst on the scene. I think if you looked at this team up and down coming into the season, he wouldn't have been the guy that you would have circled, but he has a near 1.5 OPS with 14 home runs, 35 RBI, and he has 11 stolen bases. Like, it's unbelievable what he is doing. This is a team that has a 1.1 OPS. Like, they almost have a 1.2 OPS as a team. It's ridiculous what this team is doing. And on the flip side, you have Georgia Tech, who also almost has a 1.2 OPS as a team. So I think it's very fair to say that the two top teams in college baseball are in the state of Georgia right now.
From a lineup perspective, I think it's a no brainer that these are the two best
Yes.
offenses in the country.
Yeah.
And what's even fascinating about this Georgia team is the ability to go into. We've talked about competitive depth so much here, right? And being able to tap into that. They brought in a lot of transfers, and you know, they will admit that they know what their philosophy is. When you talk about the depth they have and how many guys have started games and how many guys haven't, how many high level transfers they brought in, like Jordy Arias, Ryan Wynn, Jack Archimone, Bryce Callaway, those guys that have had success at other programs and then are now coming here and spot starting and not playing every day, but still providing value, right? Ryan Wynn's hitting 375 and in a lot of pinch hit and probably more defensive replacement stuff. Jordy Arias is hitting 325 with 2 bombs over 12 starts. Jack Archimone's hitting 308 with 10 starts. And then you go to their lineup, and it's like Daniel Jackson's hitting 418 with 14, who was another transfer from Wofford 2 years ago. Swung and missed a little too much in the SEC year one, but the tools were there. He slugged the crap out of it. And then he just put it together and did. I mean, you go look at his numbers when he was at Wofford, and you're not surprised that he's putting up the numbers that he is. It was just it took a little bit longer. And then that's not to mention the returners in guys like Trey Phelps and Colby Brink, right? Like this team, this lineup, and it's just unbelievable. And they don't let you breathe, and that park is friendly to them, but they are slugging 700 as a team. A team that's not going to hold through SEC play. We know that, but it's going to put a lot of pressure on other teams to come in there and make sure they're on their P's and Q's each and every weekend. And what makes me excited and the reason why I'm so high on the Georgia team is the pitching staff, right? Like that is where we've talked about this, and we were at Georgia last offseason. Dan and I went down there. We interviewed Coach Johnson and spent some time with him. And one of the refrains we got in feedback of our interview was our pitching isn't that great. Our pitching isn't dominant. We aren't one of the best pitching development programs in the country. And it's just, we laugh. Me and you laugh. Me and Dan laugh. We all laugh at that because it's Wes Johnson. Like this is a Wes Johnson led team. Yes, the same Wes Johnson who was at Arkansas. Yes, the same Wes Johnson who was with the Minnesota Twins. Yes, the same Wes Johnson that was at LSU. Like that's the Wes Johnson we're talking about. And if you told me over the last 3 years that the one problem that this team would have was on the pitching side, I would tell you they're going to build a wagon at some point because they were going to figure out the pitching side. And they did a really, really good job this offseason of attacking more talented pitchers. And that's not to take anything away from the guys that they had in previous years. They attacked more talented pitchers. And you have guys like Joey Volchko, who has top 10 level stuff in the strike zone more frequently, developed a little bit better, and he's been dominant. Walks are still an issue for him, but you're talking about 32 strikeouts in 26 innings. Kenny Ishikawa is a guy that they love, and he was hurt for a couple weeks. He's going to throw today as we record this. He's a guy that's going to pitch on Sundays. Dylan Vogue, however you want to say it, he's been really
Big
good for
U.
them. Vigu, yeah, there you go. The one I didn't use. He's been really good. Caden Aoki's out there spinning it out of the bullpen. He's been really good for them. And then they have young talent as well that they've brought in. That's not even to mention a guy like Matt Scott, who has starter experience. He has 20 strikeouts in 9 innings pitched. And he's not even throwing on weekends for them right now. Like when you tear through this pitching staff, it is hard to look and not find 95 mile per hour guys that are throwing strikes and not be like, holy crap, this might be the deepest talent pool of pitching in the country as well. And you give Wes Johnson those pitchers and give their hitting conglomerate those hitters. Where's the hole? Like that's where I start to go, like, where's the hole?
Yeah, 100%. And it's so funny that you mentioned the conversations that we always have when people question the pitching development side at Georgia, because it's true. Like that has been the stopgap the last couple of years. The bottleneck of the Georgia Bulldogs for the last 3 seasons has been their inability to pitch against high level lineups. But I think you have to look at it, under a microscope and look what he was able to do. You took Brian Curley out of an A10 school that was a really successful reliever, and you made him a Friday night starter in the SEC. Like, and that's a guy
And a
that was
second
like,
round pick. That's development.
he was like 92, 93 when he came in. He was
Mm-hmm.
98, 99 when it was all
Mm-hmm.
said and done. Like these are guys, and Cade Naoki is a really fun example because he's not a velo guy. He's never been a velo guy. And it just continues to translate wherever that kid goes. And he's got 31 strikeouts to 5 walks so far in 22 innings out of the bullpen. Like you have a guy that has consistently thrown 90 innings at a Power 5 program for 3 straight seasons, and you're sticking him in your bullpen. Like that's a guy that's in it. He's a Friday or Saturday starter at 97% of schools in the entire country. And you're sticking him in the bullpen as a swingman role. Kenny Ishikawa is going to be unbelievable on both sides of the ball. He's already shown flashes of it. Now the offensive side, like you mentioned, a guy like Ryan Wynn, who hasn't gotten a lot of opportunities, he put up video game numbers at Wofford, and he's competing with Rylan Lujo, who was unreal at Dayton last year. They had him and Michael DiMartini that were kind of competing with each other as like who's going to be the video game number mid major bat of the season. And you bring in both those guys, and even Lujo didn't really to start the year. Like he didn't find the lineup the first 4 or 5 games. Now he's in the lineup consistently and mashing. And Trey Phelps is, third on their list of hitters, fourth when you look statistically at who's performing really well. And he's got a 1.3 OPS. Like again, this team, you look at the holes. I want to see it more in SEC play before I really say like, are there any holes? But genuinely, I don't think there are any holes. And I think the people who were really high on them coming into the season were onto something. Like there is something to it when you say, okay, now we're going to give Wes Johnson these talents that are unbelievable. You talk about guys like Matt Scott and Joey Volchko. The stuff has always been there, and those are guys that have put up consistently 6 ERAs. And you kind of scratch your head and you're how are these guys doing this? And
Mm-hmm.
now you're giving them to Wes Johnson, and you're going to see these guys really take off and blow away really good SEC hitters all season.
So I'm gonna take a second before we pivot into Georgia Tech because I do want to give some shine. That ballpark, Foley Field, very small. The things you need to do: swing and miss, right, and avoid walks because big innings will come if you're walking too many guys, and I feel like that's been a problem in the past. So far through 165 innings, and again, take competition. We got to see this translate into SEC play. I get it. 224 strikeouts in 165 innings as a stat, with 60 walks. Listen to this. They have a couple guys, 8 strikeouts to 1 walk from Caleb Jameson. I'm going up bottom to top. We have 16 strikeouts to 3 walks from Paul Farley, 20 strikeouts to 2 walks from Matt Scott, 21 strikeouts to 1 walk from Justin Bird. Let's keep going up here. We have 32 to 10 out of Joey Volchko, 8 to 2 out of Kenny Ishikawa, 31 to 5 out of Caden Aoki, and 29 to 7 out of Dylan Vigneault. Like, we just named 8 guys that are showing stuff with strike throwing ability, and you don't need that many guys. Like, and then that's not even to mention like Joe Nottingham's a guy that I'm in love with. 7 strikeouts to 1 walk in 3 innings pitched. It's like, oops, yeah, here's our freshman. Like, here, just trot him out there on a midweek game. Like, that guy could grow into a legitimate elite reliever. And that's not even to mention Jordan Stevens, who's a guy who consistently throws upper 90s. He's struggling a little bit to start the year. And like his spot, there's pressure on his spot this year. And he was their guy last year. Like their legitimate guy last year is now 6th or 7th in the go-tos in the bullpen. That's impressive when you think about what they've built and how they've turned this roster, and just the talent alone on the pitching side combined. We know they can hit. They've hit over the last few years. They've shown they can hit in the SEC. They've shown they can do those things. We know that that's the case. If you give them this pitching staff, it's scary, because even if you look at the Tennessee game they lost and they won, it's not like they're pitching. I mean, they gave up 7 on Friday, but stuff happens in the SEC. But yesterday, Vigneault had to go out early. Aoki comes in, closes the door. They've used 2 guys yesterday. Easy money. Like, let's just go in and clean it up. And then you got Kenny Ishikawa, who they believe is going to be really good for them this year. And just like, he's going to go out there and start. And then if you need Matt Scott, Justin Bird's been really good. Like, how many guys can they go to before you start to worry? And just a wealth of talent on the pitching side. But let's talk a little bit about Georgia Tech. I know, because I said the state of Georgia. That offense and what they've done is unbelievable too. And it is a first-year head coaches in for that program as well.
Yeah, and I think if you looked at it coming into the season and you said that Drew Burress was going to be your 8th best hitter statistically at this point in the season, I think the entire country would have called you crazy. And not that Drew Burress is playing poorly by any stretch. I mean, he's got a 333 average with a 641 slug and 5 home runs, but there are 8 guys ahead of him that are hitting for a better average than him. And it's unreal. Like, Von Lackey is arguably the best player in college baseball right now with what he's been able to do. He's an uber athletic catcher. He's got over a 1,000 slug with 9 home runs, 16 extra bases, 31 RBI. This team mashed last year. They kind of have that UCLA effect with what they brought back offensively. And it's funny, listening to Drew Burress in the offseason say, like, I'm really excited for this year because they can't pitch around me based on the lineup. And he's right. Like, you can't pitch around Drew Burress anymore because, you pitch around Drew Burress and you got to deal with Jared Vincula, who hit 400 at Cal last year, and you're just shopping him into that lineup. And Ryan Zuckerman was the ACC leader in batting average last year. And Alex Hernandez has been unreal for them so far. And like I said, Von Lackey legitimately looks like the best player in college baseball right now. Like, talk about a guy that's really skyrocketed draft stock. I would take Von Lackey very, very high in the draft this season, especially as a catcher. Like, what he's doing while still catching very well, I think is really, really impressive. And you look at the pitching side, and it's been really good so far. And I want to continue to see it against top-level teams. They showed it this weekend against Clemson, which was really encouraging because last year, this is a pitching staff that dominated teams they were better than, and they struggled against teams that were close in comp, at least from a lineup perspective. And we saw it kind of bite them in the postseason. They've been really, really good. Tate McKee has been fantastic for them at 2.82 ERA. The walks are a little bit higher than I think you'd like to see, but it's because he walked 6 on Friday night. Even though he threw 6 shutout innings, he walked 6. So the walks look a little bit inflated for him, but that's mostly just all in one start, and that was on Friday night. Justin Shattuck has been really good for them. And a guy who's actually struggled, who's only going to get better, is Mason Patel. And the biggest reason is that coming into the season, they kind of anticipated him making the jump into the rotation. And he started the first 2 weeks and he got hit around, didn't look super sharp. They decided to move him back into the bullpen. And this is a guy that was the third best closer in college baseball, depending on who you ask. If you ask me, I would say third best, but has a legitimate case for the best closer in college baseball. and you're bumping him back into the bullpen because guess what? The starters have been really good and you don't really need him to do that. So you're going to put him back in the bullpen and allow him to flourish in a role that he's really comfortable in. So I think you have to look at it as this pitching staff has already shown really good flashes against Clemson, who's a very solid team. Are they a top five lineup in the country? I don't think so, but I think you have to be encouraged by what you've seen out of the pitching staff. They're again, this is another team that you know they're going to hit. Like you don't have to worry about the hitting side. Doesn't matter who they're going to play, regional, super regional, Omaha setting. They're going to hit. That offense is going to travel. I want to continue to see how that pitching staff works. Like I want to see them against Virginia. Like I want to see them against those teams, the teams that have really been mashing on offense. But I think you have to be very encouraged by what they've shown on both sides of the ball. And it's again another program that's very much so trending in the right direction. They're ranked fourth. They're probably going to be ranked third this week.
Yeah, from the offensive side, I mean, Von Lackey might push 1-1, right? Like, and I know that's
Yes.
crazy to think about, and with Rock Chalowski, but an athletic catcher who's showing the batted ball metrics that he's showing, not only just, and again, of course, you're hitting 493, of course, your contact rates are going to be high. Duh. Look at the draft analyst over here, really getting into the weeds, smart guy. But like the reality is that like with the athleticism to steal 7 bases, he's shown the ability to play every position on the field because he did that this week. He's hitting 500. He's not chasing. He's a 13% chase rate. He's an 88% contact rate. His exit velocity is up, which that was the flaw coming in. And that's where I like my player development side. The thing that I always salivate over as a guy, getting a guy into an ecosystem and developing him, you give me a bat to ball first guy, and all I have to do is add strength and bat speed and not change anything and allow it to happen naturally. This is the product. That's what Von Lackey did. Power was a concern coming into the year. He had like a sub 200 isolated power last year. They didn't change anything in terms of mechanics. Maybe they tinkered with a little bit, but they gained a little bit of bat speed. They gained a little bit of strength, and boom, this is the result. Like that's unbelievably impressive, and that's what like superstars do, right? Like when you look at Major League Baseball superstars, it's the ability to make a ton of contact, a ton of loud contact, and not swing at pitches out of the strike zone. It's like that is a superstar level player, and it's unbelievable combining the fact that he's also stolen 7 bases and he probably doesn't have to, and he's shown the ability to catch a premium position. I mean, he is very well going to push that top of the draft spot, and probably will hear his name called in the top 3, even with the assumption that he's going to come back down to earth in some way, shape, or fashion. And like you said, Drew
Yeah,
Burris is a guy who's unbelievable and is probably going to come back and offset that regression and keep this lineup elite.
yeah, and he still has 5 home runs. Like he's third on the
Yeah,
team in home runs with
yeah,
5, and it's just he just happens to be on a team whose team average is pushing 400, which is like unheard of.
yeah.
I mean, this is a team that has walked 148 times and only struck out 136 times.
It's
Like
crazy. As a team, as
as
a
a
team.
team, they're walking more than they strike out, like significantly too, like by 12,
Yeah,
which is a lot when you're
yeah.
talking about strikes and strikeouts and walks. Like they have, I I don't think they have a single. They have one guy. They have 2 guys, 3 guys in the lineup that are striking out more than they're walking, out of 10 qualified hitters.
Crazy. No, it's unbelievable, and I'm gonna sound like a hypocrite because I just glazed Georgia up and down the wall, and they haven't played anybody. But like this weekend was a huge solidifying factor for like that this
Yes,
lineup is going to compete. Right? They really roughed up Aiden Knack, who tends to get roughed up. I feel like by good lineups anyway, but they really put it to Clemson, a team that I really love their pitching development. And the big concern for me is just this pitching. I don't believe in the talent the way I believe in Georgia's talent if we're going to compare two
agreed.
teams that are very close to each other. Dylan Loy is a guy I always liked at Tennessee, so I'm not surprised now that he's been thrust into a more important position, that he's doing what he's doing, where he's throwing a ton of strikes. He's striking out a batter per inning. It's exactly what he was at Tennessee. It was just he was behind more talented guys. But I think that says everything you need to know about this Georgia Tech pitching staff is that it has to be that guy at Georgia Tech compared to at Tennessee, where they were legitimately a national championship team annually and won. He didn't have to be that guy, or there wasn't pressure to be that guy. So I'm very interested to see. They're still evaluating this, and I can tell by how many guys have started games, they still haven't found out what their 3 is. I think Loy has
No,
solidified him. You talked about Tate McKee. I'd like to see those walks come down a little bit. I love this stuff. but the walks are a little bit concerning when you're going to face a lineup like Virginia that's not going to expand the zone and they're going to put a lot of pressure on you. So that's a guy that obviously seems like he's going to be a staple in the starting rotation, but it seems like that third guy, Angelakis, is a guy that I think is getting stretched out. 10 strikeouts, no walks. That's a good sign, right? Like, and it's really the walks more than anything. The stuff isn't overwhelming enough, like we see with Georgia, to be like, oh, well, you can afford some walks, especially because that ballpark is very, very small. There's a reason why Georgia Tech's offense has been elite for so many years. It's easy to hit in that ballpark. So they're going to need a couple guys to step up and just not overwhelmed by the stuff. And I'm not overwhelmed by the strike throwing ability, but so far so good. 3.4 as a staff. We'll take it. Like you said, getting Patel to the pen and he can provide length in the pen. That's a big deal, but still leave a little bit to be desired on the pitching side and want to see what this rotation rounds out to be before I start cashing flight tickets to Omaha and believing in the talent on that side of the ball.
Yeah, which is extremely fair. I mean, like I said, last year the issue was the pitching against top level lineups. Like this is a pitching staff that will always dominate teams that they are better than. But you have to see it against the top level teams. That's how they're going to have to get out of the regional this year. Um, for me, it's a little bit of the depth piece as well. And moving Patel to the bullpen certainly lengthens out this pitching staff. But yeah, I mean they're figuring out who their third starter is, and I think you need to solidify two or three more bullpen guys before we can really put a bow on it and say like this is a team. Like I think Virginia's really going to push them in the ACC this season. I think Florida State's really going to push them in the ACC this season. Florida State is a team that us as a company are much higher than most other outlets. Like most other outlets have Florida State a little bit closer to 20. Um, and I mentioned it on our Saturday show. Like, albeit I think that 8 is a little bit high for them where we had them coming into this week. They looked really good this weekend against Wake Forest. They looked really good against Wake Forest.
Yeah.
I think that and I said it on Saturday, like I think that they were closer to 10 than they are to 25. It's like, are they in the top 10? I'm not sure. Uh, but with how much parity there's been, it's like you can't really knock them for what they've done, and they continue to show really good flashes. And they have Trey Beard back, so that's a team. Like there are 3 legitimate teams that I think are going to be really good at the top of the ACC, and that's not even counting Wake, UNC, NC State. That those teams have looked really solid so far. Maybe not that quite top tier, but they've looked really good.
Florida State's looks very similar to what we thought they were last year, right? Like
Yes.
in a super regional setting, they are going to have an advantage because they have 2 high level starters in Wes Mendez and Trey Beard. They had the same thing last year with Jamie Arnold and Joey Bellini. What is it beyond that? That's how you win regionals.
They're
That's how
figuring
you
it
win
out.
in Omaha, right? Like that's how you got to. You can't afford injuries, right? Like all of those things where if everything does break right for them, yes. But all we were talking about last year was if Cam Leiter comes back, right? Like that was all we talked about last year. Was like this team could be in Omaha if he comes back, and he never did, and that limited the ceiling of that Florida State team. And I feel like this team this year is the same exact thing. They will win a lot of series. They will win in a super regional if you get them there, but I don't know if I can hang my hat on that pitching staff winning a regional, especially if they lose one early and have to come from the losers bracket side, or Omaha and get through that gauntlet, because that's where your depth, especially your starting pitching depth, is talented and guys are exposed to situations that they weren't exposed to in the regular season. You're rolling guys out there that haven't had to take on starters innings on a Wednesday in Omaha, and you just weren't expecting to do that, right? Unless you get to that point, you didn't prepare for that. So Florida State is fascinating because talent wise, we kind of they've been the same thing the last 3 years. They've been really, really good offensively. They've had high level starters that have been able to beat anybody in the country. It's just that next competitive depth on the mound and making sure that they get that. And I think that's going to be continuing what limits their ceiling. So again, impressive weekend against Wake so far because I was at least high on Wake's pitching staff coming into the weekend. And that's not an easy place to pitch either. So even if you don't like Wake's offensive side, like that is an airport and the wind blows out and it's 340 to center, it feels like. So the ability to combine those things, plus on Florida State side, Miles Bailey's a guy who's his contact has improved, right? You're talking about a guy who has arguably 85 grade power on an 80 grade scale. And if his contact continues to showcase, and again, early sample size, competition concerns, right? Everybody's contact's going to be up. We can talk about the schoolyard bully down in Tuscaloosa, Alabama that I talk about. Um, Everybody's going to look good when you're that talented against lesser competition. Get through the conference slate, and let's see what that player is. But so far, Miles Bailey looks like superstar potential that he showcases a lot, and probably will have his name called in the top 10 at the very least, to top 15 guaranteed. So let's wrap up here, Will. Again, a lot of people listening to this might be like, okay, well, I'm really vibing with what we're talking about, college baseball. Who are some teams to watch for the rest of the season that you think are must see TV and must follow each and every weekend?
Man, and it seems silly because they're actually a top 10 right now, but Southern Miss, absolutely for me. Like what Coach Ostrander has been able to do in Hattiesburg this season is unreal. Like they were top 5 in the entire country in roster retention from last year in a portal era and technically a mid-major school. They're going for their 10th straight year of 40 plus wins, which I would almost guarantee they're probably going to hit. You know, they're 16-3 to start the year. This lineup is really deep. The pitching staff is super fun. Coach Ostrander is one of the best pitching minds in the entire country. And again, you want to talk about turnkey, easy bake oven operation. It's in Hattiesburg with the pitching staff. I mean, you lose probably the best mid-major pitcher in the country in JB Middleton, and they lost a guy that in Matthew Adams that started 4 years from them in a Saturday role. And you just say, okay, here's our next 3 guys, and they continue to play really good baseball. Some schools outside the top 25 that are making a lot of noise. I mean, UCSB, they lost a series to Southern Miss, and they haven't lost since. That's a team that is really good. You have Jackson Flora, who's arguably the top right-handed pitcher in the draft this season, if not the top right-handed pitcher. Louisiana Lafayette is another program that's really on the rise. And I want to say on the rise because they've been down, but this is a team that's historically been really, really good. They dealt with some injury stuff before the season starts, which is always going to happen. You hate to see it, but that's a program that's been really solid so far this season. The Sun Belt in general this year is really good, and it feels like in years past it's kind of been 3 teams and everybody else. And the shocker in the Sun Belt so far has been Troy, who's been very down for what we expected. But I think there are 5 legit teams in the Sun Belt this season, which is super fun baseball to watch.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's a lot of really good teams. Like I said, the first thing I said is, you know, there's these top 3 teams in this, if what feels like a top bubble, and even those couple of teams aren't immune to losses and struggle. And then you have 45 teams. Like I think when we get to the field of 64, you're going to be able to circle 45 teams that like legitimately have a case to be in Omaha, if not in the national championship series.
Well, that won't stop 16 SEC teams from getting in the tournament, though. So,
Well, I mean, when you have to go sub 500 in conference, that always helps, doesn't
yeah.
it?
I can't wait for a 12-15 Kentucky team to get over an Arkansas State team that's really good in talent.
When
But
we're getting 500 teams hosting in conference play, that's where we really get the issue. And
yes, no question, no question. But that is a bone to pick in late May. We will circle back. Will, why don't you let our listeners know where to follow you and the Just Baseball Media and College Baseball Show on all channels, and let them know where they can find you so they can get into the weeds in college baseball and have the best, at least my money's worth, the best college baseball coverage for, capital letters, free. Beautiful thing when you think about it.
Always for free. Always. I really want to hammer that home. Yeah, you can follow us. Our Twitter is College Baseball Show. I know, very original. You can find me. My handle is at Overdue Sports, but if you search my name, Will Massa, you'll find me. Yeah, I mean, this is a pleasure. I haven't been on this in a long time, but I always enjoy getting to chop up baseball with you.
Well, we try our best, right? We try our best. Obviously, we haven't been as deep in the college baseball season as you have, so I'm glad that we were able to kind of come in here, spin a little bit of player development into some team analysis, and offer our perspective, which is what I think ultimately in terms of our coverage of college baseball, we try to do best, and love your perspective on all those teams. So we appreciate you taking the time to do this. And if you're still listening at this point, make sure you follow the Backside Ground Balls Media social channels everywhere, and also on YouTube. Subscribe to the Baseball Development Hub YouTube channel, as well as the main channel, Backside Ground Balls Media. We have a ton of fun content planned as we continue to roll out ideas and rolling out what we think best. But Will, thank you so much, and we'll see you next time on the Baseball Development Hub podcast.